Alrighty. I'm gonna be honest with you outright. I don't have much documentation, or at least super updated documentation, only because literally zero time. I'm probably gonna send you an email later saying I turned it in slightly late, or extremely late, seeing as how it's technically due yesterday. But anyway, past that point, it's mostly because A, I ran a lot of problems, and B, um, yes, videos take a while to process and publish. But as for system-wise, what I've added is, well, my main project was the game, but working with others, I've gotten to, as well as using your PowerPoint, I've gotten the sprite font up and running. So within sprite font, I have the base class itself, which uses a lot of rapid XML bullshit. I call it bullshit only because that one problem kept fucking me up until I actually looked at the Discord to slap in that static cast side on that one bit. Very annoying. But anyway, past that, what was made is essentially this font type, which takes in texture. The texture then grabs XML. Main problem is all of my textures have to be flipped and upside down for it to work correctly, because that's just how OpenGL wants to act. XML collection goes through it all, and then finds font metrics in the character, and sets up all the nodes and such. Grabbing the glyph. Oh, I have a new glyph class. To be specific, it's just a wrapper for sprite, specifically just to call a very specific sprite render and just set position within its own draw. That's pretty much all this glyph does. But yeah, so that's there. There's a specific manager for it, which is here, which this manager itself is handled engine level, meaning it's deleted within the actual engine. It has its own delete call, which has its own attorney. But yeah, so the sprite font gets literally just goes inside of its collection, sees if it's there, and slaps it up all together. The load is very finicky, only because if you don't spell the XML as well as the Targa file, the texture file, the same name, it will break. I found this out the hard way, trying to be fancy with my naming. Past that, there's two actual functions to use within the actual user code, and that's screen log, which has add and render. Add uses your weird black magic of character A ... shit. I personally wanted to look into it, but I just used it and cried a little bit. Essentially, it grabs whatever you're passing in and shits it up properly, and then from there, you push that into the render and draw everything as such. Specifically, you're shitting it all into the sprite string, and the sprite string itself, when it calls its own render, calls the draw to shit out each thing correctly along the lines of its next position and anchor. What's interesting is screen log is more of a, I guess, a debug tool in my case. No, yeah, it's more of a debug tool, only because it's very simple to create and use. And sprite string, on the other hand, is sort of be treated like sprites in itself, that it could be used in any game object to show things on screen. I guess sprite log could be argued to do the same. But anyway, so I'm going to pause this real quick, and now we back. Alright, so to go over everything within my user code, it's basically split into these filters. We have the managers, which is, I am sorry for naming this, but yes, they are bad boy managers instead of enemy manager. Game manager and player manager, and then I have my multiple scenes. This blank scene, don't worry about it. This demo scene, you probably shouldn't look at it because it will most likely break if you try to load it, only because I haven't updated it. But the game demo scene, my new technical demo scene is level 2, but we don't mention that. Basically, I have two physical levels. There's level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is search and destroy, where you have to kill everything on screen or die, one of those choices. And then level 3, which is technically level 2, is survival, which is literally a shit show of as many UFOs, or in my case, air drones, as possible to literally drop bombs on you and kill you. And then there's the title screens with game over, there's game over and title screen, which are literally empty scenes that just have the sprites of game over and title. And then from there, we also have the skybox. Realistically, like in hindsight, I could have made this into an engine aspect. So there could have been a whole skybox manager and such that essentially just derives from texture and model almost. Sort of like how we handle sprites and images and such. But yeah, past the fact, most important part is this big old bullshit here. By bullshit I mean is literally straight from graphics, taking all that delicious winding and using it to make the inverted box. Again, biggest problem is I had to invert my actual TGA only because OpenGL is a bitch. Past that, there are several sprites. There's a title sprite, reticle sprite, and Stitch. Stitch was from demo. We don't talk about Stitch. We have the reticle, and we have game over. They're essentially, I set them up each as their own game object only because I have them all registering and deregistering inputables for enter, space, and then some camera motions. And then the most lovely part is the lovely part is all my game objects. It's split up into entities, the god cam, the plane, don't worry about the plane, and projectiles, as well as a timer and enemy counter for survive. Essentially, the timer and enemy counter use the sprite font in just having connections to alarmable and updatable and drawable to physically show what's happening on the screen. Testing is old stuff, so don't worry about that. Scene test objects, I was going to have others. We don't talk about the others. But essentially there's a generic class for object, and from there you pass in an actual model from your model manager, so that pretty much any model that's part of the scene that you want to just place there, such as all of my buildings, could be handled by a single factory, which it is. So we could take a quick peek at that. Within my game demo, let's just do scene 1. So on this side over here, you could see, oh, that's deleting everything. Just a quick peek. So here are basically all my managers in use. There's scene manager. Don't worry about, yeah. So this instantiates a player, and the player takes in X, Y, Z coordinates. Here's enemy tank, literally taking in more X, Y, Z coordinates, as well as the player itself. Missile truck, again, player X, Y, Z. Air drones, player X, Y, Z's. And then the stuff object, which is my scenery objects, are essentially taking your vector for position, a rotation, and scale, and then calls forth the model, the shader, and the texture. All these are using pwall only because it was a multi-meshed item that I literally just slapped together in Maya and said, hell no. Skybox is set up here, and then this E count is set up here to keep track of enemy count. The reticle is also set up here, and then the god cam is also set up here. Terrain is called via set, and then all the collision pairs are called forth from here. I guess if we want to go into very deep down specifics of all the fun stuff I did, I guess OO practices was decoupling as much as possible, utilizing managers such as the enemy and bad guy manager. Bad guy manager is called by all the bad guy factories to notify it when something's being recycled or created, and then it handles scene changing based off of that. We can go into there real quick. Scene changing is pretty much handled by the game object manager, so it grabs the current type of the scene and then switches it based off of that. Game manager is very simple. If the level is true, it does scene 3. If not, it does scene 2. It's a singleton, so it can destroy itself. It destroys itself every scene. Here's the player manager. I was implementing score, but then I stopped, only because I needed to focus on actually getting a game up and running. So that's there. I mean, there's score stuff to touch within there, but it's not hooked up to anything. But this also handles lives and such. Yes. So, we go into game entities. I have two finite state machines. One is for the drone. So here's the movement states there. And then we could just check the base movement state. And then we have forward and three different finds. So forward is this. Forward state itself is like such. Getting in the next state, you're just going through and you're calling for look at player if that's true. It's like a weird dumbed down version of the look at function that we have, or that created a while back. Basically, it makes my look at function, I guess, moot now. But past that is it's essentially checking if you are looking at them or not. Basically, if you aren't looking at them, like you find the next state of find target, and finding target then turns either right or left, and turning right or left is well, the find target itself always calls right first. And then from using finding right, if that fails, it calls find left. And once you find it, it switches back to move forward. My problem here is, I guess really the main problem I had within the whole finite state machine stuff is A, kind of looked it up and learned it too late, and B, I ran into a lot of problems with trying to get all my old AI code working with it. And what I mean by old AI code, I mean that's the factory, my bad. All my shenanigans for like lead shot, and then I actually ripped out the whole not collision, the bullet check to make sure you're connecting and all that. But yeah, past that, I decoupled all the movement within tank as well, and I was prepping them for making an attractor, but again, ran out of time. I guess we could play it real quick. Actually, no. Yeah, hold on. Alright, so just playing it real quick. Here's a start scene called World of Boy. It's me, so gotta be a boy. To continue to anything, you gotta hit enter. Here's the very first scene. Right now, you see the player log running just to show your position, and then the enemies alive is the enemy count. So this is my search and destroy mode. So the enemy types that I have while I'm playing is a UFO that drops bombs on a timer and moves the finite state machine, a tank that also moves on a finite state machine, but fires on a timer, and then a rocket. Well, technically speaking, it'd be a rocket truck or a missile truck. Specifically, the Pac 3. I forgot the major details of it, but yeah. Past that, essentially what occurs is the missiles themselves have a timer to go straight up and then go into a search function to find the player based off of calculating a new vector from the up, I believe. No, it was forward, my bad. Based off the forward, and then from there, it continues to chase you until it either is hit by a bullet or collides with the terrain or a building. So as you can see there, it deletes with colliding in the terrain, since it is a B-sphere for its collider, only to make it slightly easier to shoot down. And realistically, these would be extremely hard to shoot down all on their own. And having, since they're so extremely small. Also, yeah, rockets and bombs also destroy my objects. There you go. Here's round 2. Round 2 is a survival mode. So you have to survive